I want to say what is the meaning of recording for me
Thank you.
and why it's so important for me. There are right now 72 of us in the room, and there's 7.8 billion people in the world. And I have nothing in me that can justify why keep whatever wisdom we generate together just to us. I want to make everything that we do transparent and open to as many people as find out about it, so that we can catch up with the destruction that is going on in the world. I'm reminded of a little documentary television program that I saw many years ago about this guy in New York City who was fostering children. That is what he was doing. And at the time that the documentary was made, he had 13 children in his home of different ages, all the way from like 2 to 17. And there's a scene close to the beginning of the movie where he is sitting around this very long table where they were eating together. And the television crew was filming, but he had told the children that nothing was going to proceed without their consent, which is already an amazing thing for children to not have things just decided for them. But that's a topic for another session. And then there's a moment he says, this will not be filmed if you're not agreeing to it. And I want you to think about what it will be like if nobody knows the heaven that we have here, what we have created here and how we live here. Or if people know about it, and one by one, every child raised their hand. So this is not quite the same, but it's the same principle. So if somebody wants to say something that feels important to you, important to the whole, and that you won't say because it's recorded, we can pause the recording, but we cannot take it out after the fact. So if you need to pause the recording, just let us know. But think of it as a form of service. That's my general perspective about recordings. So now I want to jump into the topic. And most of your faces I don't know, which is very exciting for me to get to meet a whole new group of people. Because usually most places that I go, I already know at least half the people because they've been coming to many things. So this feels very sweet. And so you might not know that I am not a lecturer. The way that I teach is completely interactive. So I have things that I know I want to cover, but I don't want to say them into empty space. I want to say them when it's the right moment and they connect with something that is alive in the moment. So I would like to start with you and hear from a few of you and then build from what you say. It's not like I'm hearing from people and then we start. This is the start. You saying what you chose to come here for, why the topic of empathy across power differences is important to you. Us engaging about it is the session, not before the session. I hope that makes sense. So please let me know. What do you see in this topic that is important to you? All right, so Bodil, you are first.
Yeah, yes. I'm here because it really resonates in me, this being afraid of speaking, getting too close to others' border. I'm afraid that I will cross their borders if I say something they won't like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I want to say a little bit about what you're saying. First of all, I always connect things to the systemic level. Sure, you are an individual, and as an individual, you're afraid of stepping on people's toes. But you are not an isolated individual. This is a well-known phenomenon in our world. And why is it there? Because the patriarchal systems that we live in are structured to keep us separate from each other. Because when we are separate from each other, we're more likely to allow oppression to continue. So if you begin to think that you're taking a step closer to another person, to empathize or to receive their empathy, that is a subversive act, it might give you a bit more energy to overcome your fear.
Yeah. Thank you.
Also, you're not the only one afraid. If you're afraid, then the other person is also very likely to be afraid. So there's something about asking myself, how can I cross into the space of vulnerability, intimacy, connection? How can I cross into it in a way that will be the least challenging for the other person? Then there is discernment. Then there's really thinking about it and adapting it to the situation. So, is this making sense, Bodil?
Yes, thank you.
Now I want to give an example. Everyone who learns NVC learns to do empathy in this way. I'm going to say the way that we learn to do this. Are you feeling ... because you need ... Question mark. This is a form of speech that is unfamiliar and uncomfortable as a form of speech. We can do empathy without using that form. I'll give you an example of what that could look like. It has the same effect, but it doesn't have the strange, odd form. Raise your hand physically if you've ever lost people to their discomfort about the form related to NVC. Would you do this if this has happened to you? Yeah, so this has happened to all of us. So let's not be stuck on form. We know what we're trying to do. We're trying to make contact with another person through connecting with their experience. Since they're not familiar with it, with the form that focuses on a question, I want to ground it in more familiar forms. So that's one piece. Then there is a whole other piece, which is all of us, when we are asked a question and we're not told why we are asked the question, we're going to feel uncomfortable. This is the result of having been children. Because when we are children, we are asked questions out of context by adults who don't tell us what their agenda is, and we are forced to answer. I don't believe there's anyone here who doesn't know what I'm talking about, because I don't think this is specific to this or that culture. It's common to all patriarchal cultures, which is at this point in human social evolution, almost all cultures are patriarchal. There is overt patriarchal, there is subtle patriarchal, it doesn't really matter. It's cultures of control, of scarcity, separation, and powerlessness. Scarcity, separation, and powerlessness is what I'm talking about. If you don't like calling it patriarchy, don't worry about it. We don't have a whole lot of time to get into that conversation. But to maintain the power in the hands of the few, scarcity, separation, and powerlessness must be everywhere. And therefore, adults tell children what to do. So being asked a question without being told why is hard. So now check if I say to someone, and this is, we haven't gotten into power differences. This is still basic empathy. It's important to do this softening of the form, because it will become even more important when we add power differences to the mix. So if I say to you, just check in your body, everyone, I'm going to make it up. You don't know what the situation is, but I'm going to make it up. One version is, are you feeling sad because you have a need for connection? That's one. Just check in your body what it feels like. And now hear this other one. I've heard a lot from you, and I really want to see that I really got it, what is going on for you. I want to check with you if I got it correctly. Is it that you're feeling sad because you have a need for connection that is coming up for you in the situation that you just told me about? Which one feels better in the body? Number two, let's think for a moment about why. I grounded it in more familiar communication because I'm talking about me rather than talking about you. Talking about you is something that people don't like, because it always feels, even if there's a question mark, it feels like, you're telling me what is true for me. No, go away. So that's the first thing. The second, once I get to the question, there's context. You already know why I'm asking. I'm asking because I want to understand you. When you know that I want to understand you, you open yourself up to me more so than when you don't know why on earth am I asking you this really strange question. Anything else, Bodil? Okay. Monique?
Yeah, I'm a lot in me is going on about racism, and I'm reading a book now, a Dutch book with white people. It's called Hello, White People. It's written by a black woman, and I meet the white fragility in these conversations. So yeah, I'm really looking for a way to connect with people of color also in a mixed group, and how to handle that. It's, yeah.
Yeah, so first of all, I am grateful to you for choosing to investigate racism. It's a step forward from so many times when I've heard people say something that I found really painful. This is a quote from many people in Europe that I've heard this: racism is an American issue. Have you ever heard anybody say something like this? Now, this is not true in three ways. Number one, if you just scratch a little bit on the surface, who exactly created the United States of America, if not Europeans? And where did all those things come from, if not from Europe? That's number one. Number two, whatever any individual white person is thinking or feeling or doing now, almost all white people are continuing to benefit from the historical and contemporary results of racism. The wealth that is in Europe, and especially the wealth in the United States, was built on the backs of slaves and colonized people, enslaved people and colonized people. And that continues now. there's a mythology that says that the global north is supporting the global south. But if you actually look deeply into it, at the actual flow of resources, resources flow from the global south to the global north in massive ways that continue to benefit the global north. So that's the second thing. And the third thing, there is racism everywhere in Europe, active in these days. So I applaud you for taking that on. And I think that there's things going on for you, and I would like to hear from you what is going on. I see that your heart is responding.
Yeah, I see it the way you see. And so I really want to connect to people of color, but I'm anxious, or a bit afraid to do that. So to do it in a good way, good way, whatever. Yeah.
There you go. You're digging your grave. Anytime, you know, Marshall Rosenberg used to say, hell is being a parent and thinking that there is such a thing as a good parent. It's the same. If you think that there's a good way, then there's clearly a bad way. And by implication, you are about to do the bad way, and therefore you shouldn't do anything. That is a lot of how we are kept powerless, is fear of doing the wrong thing. If you want to bridge places that are not right now flowing, there's no way to do it without the willingness to make mistakes. This is to you, this is to all of us. I'm going to say it again. We cannot bridge across places where there's no flow without the willingness to make mistakes all the time. How do you feel hearing that, Monique?
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
I'm going to ask again. I'm going to ask again. I'm not asking if you understand or not. I'm completely confident that you do. I'm asking, what is in your heart? How are you feeling when you hear this invitation to make mistakes? The feeling.
Yeah. It makes me more free. Yeah, if that's a feeling, yeah.
So there's some expansion inside your heart. Yeah. So just take a few breaths into that. Feel it. Because the longer we stay with a state and breathe into it, especially a new state, the more familiar it becomes to our nervous system, and then there's more likelihood that we will be able to find our way back to it. Your body now knows this expansion. Maybe it didn't know it before, but now it knows. So mark it, smell it, sense it, become friends with it so that you can come back here. It's like when you find a good restaurant, you look at what street is it on and what is the corner and what's the landmark? How will I remember to come back here? Similarly, just do that for a few more seconds inside. Anything else comes to say?
Yeah, it feels much better to do something with mistakes than do nothing. Yeah, you can't mistake.
Yeah. Then I also want to say things that complicate it. Even though I fully stand behind what I said, the people that you will interact with didn't actually sign up to be experimental laboratory animals. They are not necessarily going to be nice to you when you make a mistake. That doesn't mean you don't try. It just means let go of any expectation that because you're trying, you're going to be treated well. This is another mistake that people in positions of power often do, is feeling entitled to kindness and gratitude just for trying. You're not likely to get it. Sometimes you will, but that cannot be the reason. The reason only when you do it because your heart knows this is who you want to be. You feel it?
Mm-hmm. Be true to yourself.
Entirely, and get the reward from within. Not like wait for somebody to appreciate you because you're doing something.
Now you might appreciate yourself.
Yes, by all means. You can also, find 2 or 3 other people and form a mistake club. I never thought of that before. It just sounds like fun to me. Where you tell each other whenever you take a step outside of the familiar and make a mistake and get unpleasant consequences, you tell each other and you support each other to accept the consequences and keep going. You can appreciate each other endlessly. Yeah? Enough for the moment? So I just want to pause and just have a sense that people see what I mean about teaching in interaction, that I'm not saying things and then there's a question and I answer it. It's like we are co-creating something, and that's what will happen. And some of the time I will have more to say and some of the time less. So thank you, Monique. Joachim.
Yeah. Hi, Miki. Thanks for being here. So I actually written down my question, so it might sound a little not so live. So I want some inspiration how we can reach each other across those power differences. And as a former political social activist, me and my fellow activists, we tended to divide the world into us, the aware, benign, good people,
Yes,
freedom fighters, and then we have the evil, greedy oppressors, and then
right.
the biggest.
And heaven forbid, you are never yourself the oppressor. Never. You're always the oppressed, powerless, pure.
Yeah. Yes. So I will come to that as well. And then the big mass of ignorant, unaware, fooled people. That's So we were
What used to be called false consciousness. I don't know if that language is still familiar to people.
yeah. And nowadays I find myself on both ends in different circumstances on this power. So sometimes I have some both formal and informal power, and sometimes I'm on the other end. So I want to find this authentic, genuine connection with people across those power differences, to find the beauty behind their actions and not just using them as a tool for some social change, but to be real present, be in real contact. That's why I'm here.
And which one is harder for you? To empathize with people who have more power, wealth, whatever than you, or people who have less?
Before, I would say it's harder for me to connect to people with more power than me. But now, actually, I think it's quite hard for me to connect with people who either puts me in a position of power or where there actually is a power difference.
Okay. So I want to kind of like open a bubble to talk a little bit about what is power and what power difference actually is. And especially make a distinction between what it means to have power and what it means to use power. So I have a very simple definition for power. I see power, and I will say it more than once. I see power as the capacity to mobilize resources to attend to needs. It is super simple. The capacity to mobilize resources to attend to needs. So if we start from an infant, the infant fundamental resources are two, like literally a newborn, like weeks. What are the two resources that a newborn has? Any guess?
Mother, father.
No, those are outside.
Crying.
Oh, crying, moving.
Crying and smiling.
Smiling.
Crying and smiling. Those are the two things that a baby has direct access to. The mother, the father, whoever else is there are the things that he wants to get to, but it's not a direct capacity. The only direct capacity is crying and smiling. And it amazes me that that matches completely what Marshall Rosenberg said, that we only ever say two things, please and thank you. It completely matches. A baby smiles when there is happy connection, when there is enough food, when there is, enough touch, whatever. The needs are very simple. And the smile is very easy to come by. A baby cries when they have a need that isn't directly and automatically fulfilled. Interestingly enough, parenthetically, babies that are held in arms all the time, which is the way we are designed by our evolution, cry a whole lot less. Sometimes they don't even cry at all because the communication, the non-verbal communication, non-auditory communication that happens between the person who cares for the baby and the baby doesn't even require anything, it just flows. So that's the baby for adults, we have so many resources that we can mobilize to attend to our needs. Differences in access to resources are therefore differences in power. And some of them are individual. You know, if I am 20 centimeters taller than you, I have access to things that you don't have access to. That's individual variation. If I have the talent to do differential equations, I can learn things that you can't learn if you don't have the talent to do differential equations, etc. Those are individual variation. Those are not the ones that are of great interest to us in this session. The ones that are of interest to us are the ones that have a structural or systemic component to them. And they come in two varieties. I want to know if my speech is slow enough for people to understand. Yes? Okay. So there are two varieties of structural and systemic power differences. One is within a specific structure. For example, boss and employee, doctor and patient, landlord and tenant. Those are power differences that are there because of the particular structure of the relationship. When I'm outside the office of the doctor doesn't have any power in relation to me. When I am no longer living in the rental place, the landlord can't do anything to me. But when we are in that relationship, the power difference exists. And what that kind of power difference means is that the person on the side of the power can do things that impact the person with the less power and not the other way around. In other words, if I'm your boss, I can fire you. You cannot fire me. You can leave, but if you leave, the impact is still on you. You can't stay in the workplace without me, the boss, being there. That is not an option for you. It's asymmetrical. So that means that if I'm the one with less power, everything that I do might have unpleasant consequences if the person with power doesn't like it. That sets up a very, very difficult dynamic. The people on the side of power don't want to know that this is so. I can say that this is true. Every time that I discover that somebody did or didn't do something because of the power that I have in the relationship, it breaks my heart, and I want it to not be so. One of the manifestations of that is something that a client of mine said a number of years ago. He said, having power means you rarely hear no. That really stuck with me. So I want to pause for a second before introducing the other type of power difference to see, Joachim, if you have any question or comment about what I've said so far.
I'm happy with you to continue, so thanks for asking.
Does anybody else have any question or comment before I continue?
Mika, I have a question pertaining to this topic.
Yeah.
So I understand what you're saying, that some individuals have power over others. And
No, I didn't say that they have power over others. That is, I've never said that.
You're right.
The word power over has to do with how we use power. We don't have power over. We have power that allows us to use it over others, but that doesn't mean we're actually going to. So what I am saying is that some of us have structural power in relation to others.
Well, my question's pertaining to the reverse flow of power. Say, for example, human resources with the boss and the subordinate. Human resources is a third party that comes in to rebalance the structure and create a power flow in the opposite direction. And then potentially maybe the boss is also, maybe the subordinate has power over the boss in other ways outside of that particular relationship that influence the relationship. It's complex, the complexity of the situation that I'm trying to point out.
Okay, I think that complexity in the way that I see it, and we don't have to agree, is far smaller than it seems. I think it's the people in power who believe that human resources balances the situation. If you're a small peon in the structure, you don't trust human resources. You think that human resources are there to manipulate you and to do things to serve the bosses. How far will human resources go if the head of human resources could lose their job?
Thank you.
For example. Does that make sense?
100%.
It's a very, very, very difficult reality, because the more we are in the benign, liberal, democratic, free speech, whatever mythology, the harder it is to believe how much all societies are structured and stratified in ways that are very, very difficult to move through, to connect across. You know, even if you look at, you know, friendship networks, most of the time, most people, their friendship networks are within their class and race, for example. There's a reason for it. There's a kind of comfort where you don't have to deal with the shame of having too much resource, or of having enough resource, or of not having enough resource. It's like, regardless of where you are in that map, there's shame associated with it. But if you are within your own milieu, you can pretend it's not there because everybody is the same, and it feels more comfortable. It is really, really, really hard to create actual, true, intimate relationships across those differences. How is that, Leanne?
It's very interesting. Thank you very much.
Okay. So the other type of power differences have to do with differences that are within structures that are larger than any that we can see with our own eyes. So if we are within a workplace, even the largest workplaces have 500,000 employees. That's huge. But most workplaces have 5, 10, 20, 50, 100 people. So you kind of know what the situation is. But differences of class, of race, of gender, of a variety of other factors are differences that are societal or sometimes global. And it's very hard to grasp where is the structure within which this person has power and this person has less power. It's very hard. It's much harder to see the link, and it's much easier to think that I am not part of it, especially if I'm the one with the privilege. So all this is information that we all need to learn a lot. So this was the bubble. And I confess that having said this bubble, it was long enough that I don't remember where it started. And so I want to tie back to you, if you remember, Joachim, the link.
I don't remember which part of you really that you started this bubble from, but for me, the most important thing was to how to genuinely or authentically be in connection with people.
Okay, so one of the unique features of humans, and maybe there are other creatures that have this feature, but we wouldn't know, is imagination. It's a really cool feature. And we underutilize it. The first step of true, genuine empathy is presence. Is just to stop the chatter that is inside of you and focus on beholding that there's another human being with you. The second is imagination. And I really maintain that all of us can imagine. For example, probably every single one who is on this call has read some novels about people that are completely different from you, living in different times, different places, different types of bodies, different culture, different anything. And we had no problem following along in the novel and being able to feel and imagine what it's like for the person who is the character in the novel. You recognize what I'm talking about? So we can do that without having the novel there. We can write our own little novels on the fly. That is the muscle of empathy. What are you feeling because you need? The muscle, cultivating the muscle of empathy comes from imagining what life is like from within the perspective of the other person.
Excuse me, Miki. Is it only for me that you froze or you disappeared?
No, yes, Miki, your image is frozen. I mean, your voice goes with the flow, but the image.
Okay, I think I may be able to fix it. If not, I need to exit and come back. I have a little problem with my camera. Let me see if I can fix it. Okay, thank you. So I took out my camera. I now have just a computer camera. It's not as sharp, but it doesn't have that problem. All right. So there is a person in front of you. Give me an example of a person that is hard for you to connect with or empathize with, Joachim.
Wow. Yeah, if I take this spectrum, it would be hard for me to empathize with someone who identifies me with a white, Western oppressive male, and whatever comes out of my mouth is disregarded as some power over talk.
Okay. Thank you so much, first of all, for the vulnerability implicit in your willingness to name it. I really applaud you for being willing to go straight to where the issue is. So catch your breath. And I now would like to invite you to remember the days in which there was an us and them in your history. I'm taking it only from what you said. I don't know you from before, but you said it today, that in some time ago, there was an us and a them, the bad oppressors. Do you remember that?
Yeah, can you, there was one word I didn't catch really. Could you repeat what you said?
Yes, I'm inviting you to remember yourself in the days in the past when you had a very strong us and them.
Very strong.
You remember that?
Yeah, but I don't hear the word. A very strong.
Us.
Us and them. Okay, now I get it.
Us.
Yes.
Yeah, you remember? You
Yes.
talked about it at the beginning.
Yes.
And now remember in your body what that felt like. Just the actual experience of it. You remember it?
Yeah.
Now plant that experience inside the person that is calling you white, male, oppressive, power over talk. Just plant that experience inside them. They don't necessarily have the exact experience that you had at that time, but surely they have some close or distant cousin of it. Yeah? Are they becoming understandable to you?
Yes.
Can you say something about what you think is so important to that person in the moment when you say, you asshole white male supremacist, get out of here, don't want to hear from you? Can you imagine what is actually important to them?
Yeah. Dignity.
Fantastic. I don't know if that is or isn't true, and that is not the point. The point is that you are now in empathy with that person. And that doesn't mean that you have to go anywhere near any idea that you are what they attribute to you.
And I would like to share, because there are tears coming into my eyes. So it's very hard for me to know if I'm with them with empathy, or if I'm back with myself in sort of experiencing what I was experiencing then. So it's a mixture, I guess.
Yeah. So here is what you can say in the right circumstances. I don't know what the circumstances are, but if the circumstances are aligned, you can say something like this to the person. It's a blow to hear what you're saying, and I still want to understand it. And I want to check if at the heart of all that you're saying is how important dignity is to you. Because that's what it would be for me, and I don't want to assume that I know what it's like for you. That's when the question becomes relevant, because you're genuinely asking in order to know. So often we ask those questions in order to settle and pacify an angry person. Yeah?
Use it as a tool.
Yeah. All right. What is it true that we have only 35 minutes left, Paulina?
Yes.
Oh, I don't like it, but I guess that is how it is. So I am going to, I don't necessarily go by order in which people ask. I try to do my own little undoing of power differences. So if I see a name that appears to me that it is less from the dominant culture, I will ask them to speak first. So that's what I'm going to do now, even though I don't see a face. Okay, Now I do see a face, so I will go with Sati. And I think that this will be the last person I speak with, then we do a small breakout group. And then we come back just for a little bit and then it will be over. Yes, Sati.
Yeah. When there is a boss or someone who has power, it is hard for me to believe that my needs, my emotion, my time is important as theirs. For this reason,
Important to whom? Important to whom?
Equal importance. It is hard for me to believe
to whom?
To someone.
Wait, but when you say equal importance, wait, it would
boss,
be of equal importance. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
To my boss, for example.
Okay, this is so important. I want to just highlight it. There is no external authority that measures the importance of needs. It is always important to whom, always. My blunt question to you is, are your needs as important to you as your boss's needs? To you. Forget about everyone else in the world. Let's start with you. Are they as important to you as your boss's needs are?
Sometimes I believe that, especially for time issues, I think that maybe their time is more important than mine, because they have so hectic schedules, and they deciding other people's decision also.
Okay. This is the way that the power structures get us. It isn't what your boss does. It is what you have been trained to believe, so that you, like millions and millions and millions of us, submit voluntarily without anybody having to actually use force. Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It's not that I don't see that your boss may have very complex priorities to juggle, but that doesn't make their needs more important than yours. It might to them, but please, on bended knee, don't let that affect you. I want you, a female person, in a world where female people's needs are not valued by others. I want you to value your needs fully, always. Not that I think that my saying it once is enough, but maybe it's a little seed. How does it feel to even imagine it?
It feels wonderful, but it looks a little bit hard to me. And maybe there is some way.
I want to differentiate. Go ahead. Maybe there's some way.
Some way to improve it, and I am asking, I want to ask to you, how can I overcome this?
So inside you, no one can take away anything from you without your permission. Outside, people can kill you, they can starve you, they can beat you up, they can do all kinds of things, but inside you, no one has access without your permission. Do you agree with that? So you might choose to prioritize the needs of the boss, but that is you choosing. It's about you choosing in relation to your needs. It's not because their needs are less important, are more important. Do you see? All over the world, there's almost no culture in the world that doesn't do this. Makes the needs of women less important. Everywhere. It's not specific to any particular culture or country. There's only a few pockets in the world where there's still cultures that are not within the patriarchal paradigm. So this isn't unique to you. I want to, again, distinguish between what story you tell yourself inside and what choices you make. You see what I mean? I can make the choice in order to protect my safety and security. I might always do what my boss asks me to do, but it is not because my needs are not important. It's actually because they are important. That is a lesson that I hope will stay with you and everyone else always. Now I'm going to exit your situation for a moment to say something to everyone and then come back to you.
Thank you.
Which is that if I am in a position of power, I want to always remember, if I'm a boss in particular, I want to always remember what we just heard from Sati. Is it Sati or Sati?
Sati.
Sati. Okay, I'll try. I want us to always remember that the people who are employees have been trained to believe that their needs are less important. If I want to empathize and connect with a person with less power, this will help me remember. It will help me remember that that person has been trained to devalue their needs. And if I want a genuine eye-level relationship, it means that I need to compensate for that by finding a way to elevate the needs of the person with less power, even when they don't. Hope that is making sense. And I want to remember that there are always going to be situations in which dignity, meaning, connection, loyalty, all kinds of things like this will be more important than safety and security. It's not always safety and security that win. All of us know stories about people who chose to risk their life in order to protect their dignity. Yeah? So back to you. Can you give me a specific situation in which this comes up that you would want to think about how to navigate?
I feel a little bit worried, and it is hard for me to continue. Maybe if we can continue with something else.
Okay, so this is overwhelming for you.
Yeah.
Is there any part of it that has been supportive for you?
No, not right now. Thank you.
Thank you for telling me.
Thank you.
Okay, so complex moment in which I failed in empathy. Is anyone tracking it accurately? That is what just happened. I failed in my empathy. Do you see it? So who was it? Where was it? Bodil? About risking making mistakes. I just made a mistake. It's very sad for me. There isn't going to be an opportunity to correct it. And I'm not going to let it stop me. I would like to learn what happened, what the mistake was. But I may or may not learn. I will just continue to think about it. But it is not something that will stop me from continuing to try. All right. So it is time now to go into breakout groups. We'll do it just for 10 minutes. I would like you in the group to do one of two things. One is to just talk with each other about what has happened over this period of time, what you have learned or not learned, what questions remain for you, what you want to do, etc. in general. Or you can take a situation from one of you and look at it through the lenses that we have explored here. We have about 10 minutes left and we don't have time for deep dives any longer. If there's anything, first of all, if there's anything left over from what happened before and anybody wants to comment or say anything, I want to let you all know that I don't read the chat. I don't have the capacity to multitask. So if you want to say anything to me, really the best way to do it is live. I'm also happy to stay another 10 minutes afterwards if that works for Paulina and the team, if people want to continue to debrief, or anything else that is coming out of your small group or from everything that we have done. I think if nothing else, we have seen that this is a major area of investigation. We don't actually know the answers, none of us. And we need to continue to experiment, to learn how to connect internally and across those differences. Eva, please unmute yourself.
Yeah, yes, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for the aha moments during this session and for your very, very interactive way of sharing and speaking and letting us discuss things. I was taking notes and I will go back to them. Just big thank you, first of all. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm hoping to hear from more people with specifics about what is still in you. Maybe there is a question that is still open or anything. Yes, Muriel.
Hello, Miki.
I'm trying. I don't think I can pronounce it right, but I at least try.
I heard you. Can you hear me?
Muriel?
Yes, perfect.
Yes.
I heard you say that a person in power with more power then others need to compensate for this difference of power. And I was wondering how to do that. So I saw how you did it with, for example, your voice.
Miki, we cannot hear you, and it seemed like you wanted to say something.
Minute, but right now I'm not hearing anyone.
Okay, now we are hearing you, and now we can see also that you're moving. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Yeah.
Muriel, can you say it again, please?
How can a leader or boss compensate for his difference of power? Compensate.
Yeah, I think I want to make it easier for people to say no to me. That is one big piece. When somebody gives me an idea, I want to take it seriously, express gratitude, even if I don't like the idea. I want to tell the person that I looked at the idea, I thought about it, and here's why I don't like it, rather than just ignore it. These are like small things, but that are very, very meaningful. When I am in a room and there are people from different levels of hierarchy, I will ask to hear first from the ones lowest in the hierarchy, because they're the least likely to speak. And every person with power who speaks makes it then harder for the person without power to speak. So I start from the bottom. If I am within a hierarchical structure that I can't change, these are some of the ways that I can compensate. It doesn't change it, but in the moment, it does a micro rebalancing. Yeah, makes sense?
Thank you, yes.
Miki?
Yes.
I thank you for this about for me, I don't feel that alone or out of the community. Or when you said this, for me, it's been feeling strange to say, are you feeling because you need? Mm-hmm. Because I think also it feels strange for me to say to people like that, and because I can really understand this. When I tell about what I feel and think and need, and then I go to the other person, then it's I make connection. You know, it feels like a little something like power over to say this word. So I can't really say this. So thank you for telling this earlier today. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I want to clarify. It isn't. There are two different things going on at the same time. One is, who am I talking about? And the other is, where is the emotional focus? And I can talk about you and the emotional focus will be on me. I can talk about me and the emotional focus will be on me. I can talk about me and the emotional focus is on you. If I want to be in an empathic space, I will talk about me, but the emotional focus is on the other person. I am offering myself as connection rather than asking the other person to hear me. If that makes any sense, that difference.
Thank you.
What else? Leanne?
I have a question about when we're in a power structure where we find we're not meeting very important needs of our own, that we're trying to meet. We can make requests of the people around us in that system to try to meet those needs, or we can make requests of ourselves if others are not willing to collaborate. Those are the two options that I see. What happens when we're in a position where we have to make the requests of ourselves, but we're relying on that system to meet other needs that are also very important? So it feels like a compromise. For example—
Can you give an example? Oh yeah, great. I was hoping for an example.
For example, you're in a workplace or even you live in a country where there aren't strict sexual harassment regulations, and you are a woman who is regularly sexually harassed, and in the office where you work, you are being sexually harassed, but there's no regulations to support you, and you have made comments and gestures and small attempts to reduce the sexual harassment that's happening, but nothing changes. You're relying on that job to feed your children.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's you know, the only thing that you have power about in this situation is what you tell yourself. You can tell yourself, I'm a victim, I have no options, this is terrible, the system sucks. Or you can tell yourself, given the conditions that I live in, this is the choice I am making in support of my family and children. You will take the same action, but you will feel differently because of the different story you tell yourself about what is happening. And there's always mourning, which softens everything, but that's beyond the scope of today. Thank you. What else? What are you taking with you? Yes.
I would like to share that what especially resonated with me is that part about that often is we who are giving up the power and we submit. That touched me very deeply. And that reminds me of one quote that I heard. It sounds that great people are only great because we kneel. And it kind of reminds me what you said. Thank you for sharing this.
Thank you. I'm curious to know if you have a sense that you actually learned something about empathy across power differences. Would somebody share, you know, 2 or 3 people sharing what you actually learned would be very meaningful for me to hear as we come to a close. If anybody has like a brief thing that you can say that is something you actually learned. Yeah.
I learned something.
Yeah.
I learned that I may not receive that connection or appreciation or gratitude that on some level I actually am expecting. And that was very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Anne?
I much enjoyed hearing that there is a difference between having power and using it.
Yes.
And I can make a choice to change the situation for both of us when I'm in that moment.
Yes. Yes, I can have power and use it with people, and I can have power and use it over people. I can not have power and develop resentment because I can't use power over. Or I cannot have power and have acceptance and still from below try to collaborate with people and use power with. All of these options are possible. Thank you. Is it Joanna or Joanna? Unmute, please. I didn't hear a thing you said.
Okay, I'm Joanna. And I don't know if it's exactly about what I've learned about power, but it was something important for me as I feel very powerful and powerless in relation to my children. And even it's the one side or the other side. And it was so beautifully to hear about these mistakes we all do, and any way to go on with making these mistakes, but trying. And on the other hand, that thinking about myself as a good or bad parent is the way to fail anyway. So it was something which I take with with me. Thank you for that.
Thank you. And Eva, you get the last word and then we close. Oh, there's one more person. Jane Marie, you also want to speak. Okay, Eva and then Jane Marie.
Okay. So the very beginning, what you've said, really.
Can you speak a little louder? I'm struggling.
Okay. All right. Just recently, I've been caught in this pattern. Go to emotions and needs. And thank you for reminding me that my intention is kind of the first. Yeah, I want to understand something from the other person first of all. Yeah, so that kind of put me in different place with this pattern. Thank you. And there were also other things which I wanted.
Thank you. And Jane Marie.
Anyways, thank you very much. I really enjoyed your talk, and I appreciate the session that told us women that we don't have less need because we are women. We are equally powerful and we have equal needs. And it made me to appreciate the woman the more because naturally the woman has needs, but because she's a woman, because she's a mother, she sees the needs of others. But we have to appreciate the fact that if we do not take care of our needs, we can become so overwhelmed by these needs that we are no longer able to take care of others. So there's always a need for a balance. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.